Welcome to Jazz Time. Jazz Time is an online store that buys, sells, and trades authentic luxury watches. We make these videos so our customers can easily choose the best watch for themselves in the comfort of their own home. If you like this video or you like this watch, click on the link in the description below to buy it at the lowest price anywhere online. Today I'm going to be reviewing the
A Lange Sohne
Flyback Chrono 1815, reference number 401031. I'm going to talk to you about the bezel, the dial, the case, the movement, the strap. I'll try it on and I'll even give you my thoughts on it. So let's start first with the case. This is the 1815 case. It measures 39.5 millimeters in diameter. That's from the 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock position, the longest distance across the watch, not including the pusher. Just to give some reference, 39.5 is a fantastic size for a dress watch. Typically, dress watches like this can range anywhere from 36 millimeters all the way up to 42. So this is right in the middle of that. 36 would be for a man with a small wrist, and 42 would be for a man with a quite large wrist. You don't really see them past 42, and 39.5, in my opinion, is a perfect size for somebody in a medium to large build. You'll see it when it's on my wrist, that you'll see part of the head, all of the head actually, and part of the bracelet, which is perfect placement in my opinion. Now, this is part of the 1815 collection. The 1815 collection was made back in 1995, and it pays homage to when A Lange Sohne was first created. And, you guessed it, A Lange Sohne was created in 1815, and this case is their most traditional or most recognizable case. It has these beautiful lugs, as you can see on its side, so I'm going to turn it on its side profile. It's a very simple case, but quite recognizable at the same time. You can see this case is beautifully done. You look at it on its side and you see these two lines right here, and you might think, well, what's the big deal? Well, it looks like it has a mid case, but it actually doesn't have a mid case. It's actually a solid piece of gold, and they put these lines on here to give it some depth, to give it some perspective instead of just having a straight line. So it extends the lines of the lugs. Now take a look at these lugs. These lugs are also beautifully done, and if you carefully look on the edge of this lug, it has a beveled edge, which means instead of just going from one edge to another, it has a third edge to it, so a beveled edge. And if you look at the way the lugs are connected to the case, I think it's beautifully done. It doesn't stick out in a funny way, and it looks very seamless, at least to me. Now, if you look at the profile, which I have the watch turned to its side, and you can see it from the side profile, the height or the thickness of the watch is only 11 millimeters, which is a great size as well. It's not too thick, and it's also not too thin. And these proportions are really what I believe make this watch one of the best manual wind chronographs that you can get in a dress watch. Because you just look at it. 39.5, it fits perfectly on the wrist, and 11 millimeters thickness, it's also just perfect. It's just a fantastic size. You wouldn't want it too thin because then it doesn't have any weight or heft to it, and you don't want it too thick because then it becomes cumbersome. So this is just really in a perfect spot. I might also remind you, or let you know, inform you that this collection, this Flyback Chronograph manual wind, has 3 generations, at least as of 2023. And this one that I have in my hand was the first generation. It was created back in 2004, and they created it for about, 4 or so years, and then around 2010 they created the second generation, and then around 2015 they created the current generation. So there's 3 generations, and actually they all look very similar. Okay, well, that's the case. They have not changed anything about the case. The case has always been 39.5, and the thickness has always been 11. Alright, so that's the case of the case. Let me actually turn it to the crown side so you can see it. Now, when you look at the crown side, what do you notice? They continue the lines as you would expect. The pushers, as you can see, I like the way the pushers are done. They are thick, but not too thick. Just thick enough to make it blend into the rest of the case. It looks well thought out. And if you see, of course, the lugs are beveled on this side, and they're not any different from the other side. The crown, as you can see, it's actually got some words written on it. I think it's probably a little too small, and you guessed it, it says
A Lange Sohne.
as you would expect, the makers of the watch. So the crown is, as expected, well, as quite as nice as the side profile from either side. Nothing really that's going to pop out at you. So now let's talk about the bezel. Now, the bezel is a domed bezel, meaning it's convex, meaning it protrudes outward as opposed to concave, which would be sunken in. Now, some watches have concave bezels, some have convex. This one is convex. What does a convex bezel do? It kind of makes the watch from the side profile a little bit thicker, to be honest, because it extends the top part of the case. Now, if I turn it on its side and you look at it, you can see that the top part kind of protrudes a little bit. That's because the bezel is domed, which is not a bad thing. And what do I think about it? Well, I like that they actually didn't do anything with the bezel other than just put a convex bezel on it or a domed bezel on it, because sometimes watchmakers do fancy things with the bezel, put some engravings on it or put diamonds on it or something like that. They didn't do any of that. They made it as simple as possible. So I think it looks quite nice. Now, sometimes watchmakers also make the bezel super thin so that they can extend the dial. That also looks good in some situations, but here they chose it in the middle. Again, not too thick and not too thin, which is very cool. Now let's move on to the dial here. The dial is black, and the watch, I think I told you at the beginning, is a rose gold watch. Now, it's very common for watchmakers to make rose gold with a black dial. It's just a good combination to make. And, well, that's what you see here. Now, what are some of the things that I can point out about this dial? Well, the outer ring is a pulsometer, and it has a logo,
A Lange Sohne,
at the very top. This pulsometer, you're probably never going to use it, and it is so freaking small that I don't even think you can read it unless you have a magnifying glass. But it doesn't really matter. There's a lot of things that we have in life that are just for decoration, and this is probably one of them. So the pulsometer on the right-hand side, or some people call it a tachymeter if it was like on a Rolex or something, but it basically serves the same function. It allows you to check what speed something is going at. I don't exactly know how to use it, and probably you're never going to use it, so let's not even talk about it. But basically, it looks very cool. I think it looks cool. You'd probably have to agree with that. And interestingly, they put the logo on the bezel, which is actually pretty cool. Now, what I do want to point out in this dial is that something is so interesting, and you might not even be able to see it on this video. But you could click on the link in the description below where you can buy it at jazztime.com, and then you can also see many pictures of this watch from all different angles, and then you could probably see what I'm talking about. The dial is layered and it has different recesses. It's recessed for different parts of the dial. So the top part of the dial, where the bezel connects, is higher. And then the underneath, that is the dial where you see 12, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and so on. That part you see. And actually, interestingly enough, if you look at the pictures on our website, jazztime.com by the way, you'll see that on the minute markers, there's like this funny M signal. It's like an M-shaped hash mark that goes down each of the minute hands. I'm not sure exactly why they did it, but I think it's a really cool detail. You don't really see that with very many watches. I mean, yeah, it's quite interesting. Now let's get a closer look at the center of the dial. If you look at the center of the dial, you'll actually see, again, that it's recessed down. The center where it says Flyback Chronograph, that part is recessed further down, so it gives another layer of complexity to this dial. I should also mention that this dial is black, but it's not just black. Sometimes the dials can be black and shiny, but this one has a matte finish black. Now let's move on to the final part of this dial, which is the subdial. Now, these subdials on the bottom right and bottom left, they are symmetrical, but they're not in the center of the watch, which I think is also pretty interesting because it gives the watch some character. Too often you see these sub-counters on the left and on the right in the center of the watch. And these ones are put a little bit down. I think it has something to do with the movement and the way the movement is made, but at any rate, what you'll notice about these subdials is they're sunken down even further. So this watch actually has 3 layers to it. It actually has 4. It has where the bezel is, the dial, then it's recessed again for the center, and it's recessed again for the subdials. So that's 4 layers on this dial. Now, you might not notice that just by looking it straight ahead, but that's why you're watching this video, so you can learn more about it and see if you want to buy it at the lowest price anywhere online. Now, just moving on to the hands. They haven't really changed the hands even in the current generation in 2023. They're still these sword hands that are made of gold. And if you look at the sub-dial hands, they're actually blue. Interesting. I think they're made of blue steel or steel that's treated to make it blue. This is pretty interesting. I mean, you really have to look at the details here.
A Lange Sohne
Really did a great job covering all the details in it. And they actually also wrote Glasschut on the bottom. Glasschut, Germany. Did I mention A Lange Sohne is made in Germany? Guess where? Glasschut. Why? Well, it's probably the only watchmakers not in Switzerland that is considered a legitimate high-end luxury watch. So Germany is really doing a great job. And when I turn this thing over and you check the movement, you'll really see why. Okay, so I've talked to you enough about the dial, the bezel, and the case. I guess now it's time to talk about the strap. There's not a whole lot to talk about. It's a leather strap. It's 20 millimeters going to 16, 20 millimeters of the lug, 16 at the buckle. It has your standard buckle. And of course, these straps can be changed, but the one that it comes from the factory, it looks very nice. And I like it. It's crocodile, but it's not a shiny crocodile. It's matte. And it's not this hard one that makes it look too formal. It's quite supple, and I think it just matches the watch very well. Okay, now let's look at what's probably one of the coolest manual wind chronographs ever made. This is the Caliber L951.0. It's actually a modified L951.1, which was the datograph movement, but they modified it to fit this watch. So hence 951.0 as opposed to 951.1. And you might say, well, why would you want a stripped down version of the datograph movement? Well, the datograph was a massive watch. It was super thick, really big. Yeah, it did a lot of stuff, but it was kinda cumbersome to wear such a massive watch. And this watch is much smaller, thinner, and it's a lot easier to wear. Not to mention, it's also cheaper. So in my opinion, if I had to choose one and I could not resell it, I would definitely take this Flyback Chrono Manual Wind 1850 over the datograph because the datograph was just so hard to wear. Yeah, the datograph looks cooler, but it was also just not that easy to wear. It's just too much stuff going on and it's just too big in my opinion, so this is a much more subtle and usable watch. The datograph, if you don't know, just go to A Lange Sohne's website and there you can check it out. Okay, now let's actually take a look at this movement, and to really get a good look at the movement, I think you've got to go to jazztime.com. That's JAZTIME.com, so that you can get a better look at the detail, because in the video, it's just not going to be as clear. But if you look at the pictures on our website, then you'll really get a good look at it. That is why you can blow up pictures, and this is where
A Lange Sohne
really shines. I think they make one of the most beautiful movements, and they definitely decorate their movements. Probably number 1 and number 2, I would say, are Patek Philippe and A Lange Sohne in terms of how they decorate and finish their movements. Their movements are done to perfection. All of these small pieces have perfectly beveled edges. And even if you just look at it, it's quite a marvel. It's just, wow, incredible. They've done an insane job making it perfect. I don't want to bore you with all the details about the movement because, let's be honest, I'm not really sure. I'm not a watchmaker. I don't really know all of the intricate details, but anybody could just look at this movement and go, wow. I mean, it's a very, very nice movement. What else can I say? Well, I would say that it has like 300 some parts to it. It beats at 18,000 beats per hour. And what else? It has a 36 hours power reserve and it looks really beautiful. Oh, it actually has 320 parts exactly and 34 joules. And it says it has 4 gold chatons. So it's got a lot of cool stuff in it. I mean, just look at it. It looks badass. Okay, now it's time for me to try this on and give you my thoughts. I am 200 pounds, I am 6 feet tall, and let's see how this watch looks on me. As I told you, it is 39.5 millimeters, and how do you think it looks? I think it looks fantastic, and I am a real fan of
A Lange Sohne.
I think they're a great watch. To me, they're like the Patek, but also a little cheaper, but it doesn't mean they're any worse. They have their own identity, and they just make fantastic watches. And for this price point, it is hard to beat. They don't make a lot of watches, something like 3,000-4,000 watches a year. So at this price point, and for the rarity of it, a lot of people have Pateks. Not a lot of people have
A Lange Sohne.
So it's just a fantastic watch. And if you want to get it at the lowest price anywhere online, go to jazztime.com or click the link in the description below.
If you want to find out more about the watch you just saw in the video, you can just click below on Show More to see the full description. Then you can check the link next to Model as seen in video, click on it and you will get to the proper page where you can see all the details. If you're watching on a mobile phone, you have to click on the arrow down on the right hand side below the video to see the full description. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you would like to share this video with your friends, you can use the share button below and share it on any platform you like. If you have questions, constructive feedback, want to tell us about some mistakes or misspeaks, just write a comment below. If you want to see more videos like this, you should subscribe to our channel and visit our channel page where you can find all the videos. And if you're interested in a specific watch brand, you can check out our playlists. If you want to check the price for a watch or want to buy one, remember at jazztime.com you always get a steep discount, so you should check the prices with us. If you want to know the price for a specific watch, just go to Google, type in Jazztime, plus the brand, model and the details you're interested in, and Google will find the right page for you. Thank you for watching.
Patek Philippe. Patek Philippe. Patek Philippe. Audemars Piguet. Audemars Piguet. Audemars Piguet. Richard Mille. Richard Mille.